Welcome to Women Mastering Midlife, where we dive deep into the rich complexities of womanhood in our middle years. I'm your host, Victoria Bird, a pharmacist, certified women's health coach, and your guide on this transformative journey. Whether you're navigating perimenopause, thriving in menopause, or mastering midlife's many transitions, this is your weekly dose of expert guidance, compassionate support, and a judgment-free space to explore it all. Here, we're empowering women to master midlife on their terms, reclaiming our health, our happiness, and our power. Together, we'll rewrite the narrative around this remarkable stage of life, from something to dread into a beautiful, bold transition. I'm so glad you're here. Today on Women Mastering Midlife, I am joined by Meghan Rabbitt, an award-winning journalist and the author of the newly released book, The New Rules of Women's Health, Your Guide to Thriving at Every Age. Meghan has spent more than 2 decades translating complex medical science into clear, empowering guidance for women, with her work appearing in Women's Health, Oprah Daily, Prevention, and Maria Shriver's Sunday paper. In this conversation, we're talking about what it really means to take ownership of your health, why women have been left out of research for far too long, and how we can stop normalizing symptoms that deserve real attention and care. Meghan's book is part manifesto, part roadmap, and entirely focused on helping women trust their bodies, ask better questions, and rewrite the rules of healthcare at every stage of life. This is an episode for any women. This is an episode for any woman who has ever felt dismissed, overwhelmed, or unsure of what information to trust, especially in midlife. Thank you so much, Meghan, for coming on. I'm really excited to dig into your book.
I'm thrilled to be here. Thanks so much for having me.
So one of the things that I will stand on my soapbox, and it's the hill I will die on, is education and self-advocacy, especially in women's health. It's unfortunate that we have to do it, but we're far away from not having to do it. So I'm really glad that this book is coming out, and it's going to not only educate, but empower women to make the choices in their healthcare that feel right to them.
Well, that was my North Star, really, when reporting and writing and revising and fact-checking this book, was to really have it be a manual that women can use and tuck into and out of as health issues come up, so that we can understand our bodies to feel better able to advocate for ourselves.
Yeah, you described this book as a manifesto for women's health rather than a traditional health guide. What felt outdated about the old model, and why do we need new rules now?
Yeah, I mean, I think for so long as women, we've been letting other people make the rules for us, right? Let's call a spade a spade. So we are finally at a point where women's health is having a moment. I don't know about you, but I can't go to coffee with a girlfriend or a happy hour or even out to dinner with another couple, and we're all talking about women's health topics. We're talking about menopause and perimenopause and all the symptoms that come along with it. And I feel like really right now is this prime time for us to be making new rules for ourselves and saying, okay, what do I need to know so that I can get the care I need and deserve?
Yeah, I feel like I thought it was just based on what I do. I feel like everybody wants to talk about their menopause symptoms or midlife, but I feel like there are a lot of girlfriend roundtable conversations, coffee chats that are happening about it, which is so much better than living in misery and silence and figuring it out on your own.
Totally. And I think our mother's generation, my mom's in her early 70s, and she was of the generation where you just kind of buck up, buttercup, and you deal with what you're dealing with, and you're strong and can deal with it. And so you soldier on. And I think we know more now, and the more we know, as you said so beautifully when we started, the better able we'll be to speak up for ourselves and to say, wait a second, this isn't just stress. This might be perimenopause. And I want to talk about the symptoms I'm dealing with because I know what symptoms are part of that milieu of symptoms that can be part of this transition, so that we can talk about whether or not I'm in it and can get the treatment I need.
Yeah. Well, and I also feel like for women, the idea of getting a second opinion, unless it's a major diagnosis of something, but to find out that your doctor doesn't have the answers that you want or need, and that it's okay to get a second opinion, I think is huge. And it's revelatory for our generation, which it shouldn't be. Yeah. So I think that this is a very hot topic that I'm excited about, for sure.
Yeah, and I think the more we know, the more empowered we'll feel to get that second opinion, right? A big new rule, I think, that really emerged in the reporting of this book is we can't outsource our care. We really have to take ownership and say, okay, like I'm going to put together my team of practitioners who are going to help me navigate the health stuff that I will inevitably face in my life. And when we have the knowledge to be able to know what we're looking for, we walk away from those appointments better able to say, oh yeah, that's my doctor, or wow, that nurse practitioner just changed my world. And I think that just can help us feel more inspired to make health changes for our longevity and to help us optimize our health.
Yeah. You interviewed more than 100 experts across medicine and science. Was there a moment in your reporting that fundamentally changed how you think about women's bodies or healthcare?
Yeah. I mean, one of the recurring aha moments was like, how are we at 2025? And still behind? Or how has really important health research happened so recently? I interviewed a urologist, Dr. Maria Uloko, who dissected the clitoris only a few years ago because it hadn't been done before. And what we understood about this incredibly important organ in women, like we're talking like 2022 is when this research happened. And before that, the research we were referring to was in cows. That's what we were translating for women. And so that's mind-blowing, right? When you think about women's health research didn't really get the focus it needed and deserved until 1993. I mean, that's like within our lifetime here. I mean, it should shock us all and enrage us all. I think the good news is that things are changing. So that was the part that left me hopeful in the reporting of this book, is that we are finally, not only are we talking about it, but I think partly why we're talking about it is because there are more female researchers at the table deciding what gets researched. So we're making progress. We have a long way to go. But yeah, it was pretty shocking.
Yeah, I don't feel that old. I remember that I graduated from pharmacy school 21 years ago at this point. Feels like it wasn't that long ago. But I still remember when the WHI study came out and the dramatic change in hormone therapies, prescriptions. I also remember when the little blue pill came out and how that changed healthcare and how that changed my filling habits. So I think it's interesting to see what we've come into, but there were some big things that happened to women's health that I think we can learn from and move forward in a better way. I think a lot of people have all of this conversation around the horrific WHI study, but there was a lot of good data that came from it as well. So I think we need to like also give it its due. And so I think that while we talk about the research that needs to happen in the future, there is some stuff we can extrapolate from those bigger studies that would be helpful for us.
Absolutely. I mean, I love that, because really that we can't just throw away something. This is where we start to get sucked into these like clickbaity headlines. And this is where knowledge really does help us in assessing those headlines and saying, wait a second, there was so much, as you say, great information that came out of the WHI. And we can't just pick out it's cherry picking what we want. And like, that's not good science, right? You really need to look at everything on the whole. And thankfully, there's so many menopause practitioners now, and a lot of them are taking to social media and really doing their part, what they can, to educate us about hormone therapy for the menopause transition. And thankfully, my mom was never even offered it as an option. And that won't be true for me. So that's great. That's really hopeful.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. You talked about 1993, and that was that year where drug companies had to start to include female populations in their studies, which was really, I can't believe I was 13 when that happened. Like it feels like it should be archaic, but it really was recent in times of medicine and science. So one of the themes in the book that you talk about is that research historically treated men as the default patient, and that legacy is still showing up in women's healthcare today. So what is your feeling on that, and how did you put that into the book?
Yeah, I mean, when you understand that for so long the male body was the default, and the assumption was that we could just take that research in the male body and apply it to women, but then you start seeing the downstream effects. I interviewed doctors who are like, a lot of the diagnostic tools we still use were all developed based on the male model. And when you think about that, it's like shocking. Actually, personal story here. I just had my first breast MRI. And when I got up, I was like, good God, like that was uncomfortable. I don't know if you've ever had one. It's not something to be afraid of. It's an amazing screening tool. So I don't want to scare women away from it. But I think I wished I got a little bit more informed about like, it's going to be a little uncomfortable for 22 minutes. And when I got up, the MRI tech was like, we all joke, this machine was definitely designed by a male. Yeah, but I actually want to tuck into it now and put my journalist hat on and really understand if that's true. I believe it was, because even things like that, from the comfort to, but also it has worse impacts when we're talking about things like heart tests that were based on the male heart. And we know more now about the female heart being really different. So unfortunately, it still spans a lot of different categories in medicine. I think scientists are working hard to play a game of catch up, but we're still behind, and eyes wide open going into some of that.
Yeah. Well, and a lot of the conversation that I have is around perimenopause and menopause, even though this book spans all of female reproductive years from being young all the way through. You talk about perimenopause. It's not a niche. It's a blind spot right now, and it's a critical window that medicine is often overlooking. From your reporting, what are the biggest missed opportunities during this stage of life?
Yeah, I interviewed Dr. Lisa Larkin, who I think said something so poignant about women's health in midlife in particular, which is that we are in this prime window to take care of ourselves in ways that will optimize our health down the road. And unfortunately, this is around the age in midlife where we stop seeing our reproductive health specialist, right, as regularly as we used to. Hopefully, we're still doing those annual Well Woman exams, but life gets busy. Sandwich generation, you're taking care of young kids or teenagers. You're taking care of maybe older parents. Work is really busy. This 40, 50-year-old, these decades are full on. And I think, unfortunately, what can happen is that everybody else gets more attention than you do. Mm-hmm. And so I think a big takeaway and a new rule I want all women to walk away from this book feeling is like, at midlife, now is the prime time for me to really assess my health, get the screenings that I need, and also think about ways to optimize the different lifestyle habits we talk about a lot, because they really do pay off down the road in our 60s, 70s, 80s, and beyond.
Yeah. Well, when I think about like, wow, my 20s, like, would I want to go back and be 20 again? No. Like, I do not want to do my 20s over again. Would I love my 20-year-old body a lot better? Oh, absolutely. I would take so much better care of my 20-year-old body and appreciate it for what it is. And so I'm trying to instill that, like, now look forward to your 60s. Like, think about what you want your 60s to look like and take care of your 40-year-old body.
I love that so much. And I think women in midlife, we when you're in your 20s, you sort of feel invincible, right? Like the end feels really far away. If you're lucky, if you don't struggle with a lot of health stuff. Like I know for me, my 20s, like, gosh, I was out in the sun without enough sunscreen on. I was having fun, and you just don't think about the repercussions. I think the gift of our 40s and 50s, this midlife point, is that you understand the repercussions a lot more, and it can be a real like impetus to make better decisions. So I'm totally with you. Like there are aspects of my 20-year-old self that I would love to go back to.
Yeah.
But if I could rewind time, I would be like, look, slather on the zinc a little bit more, so you have fewer dermatology appointments when you're 47.
Yeah, and don't drink so much.
That is a big change I made after working on this book for nearly 3 years. I don't drink alcohol. When you really look at what the research is and how many detrimental outcomes there are from alcohol, it can be such a bummer, but man, I feel better. And I feel like it is such a low-hanging fruit when it comes to helping my health over the long haul.
Yeah. I mean, you not only talk about the research and the advocacy, but you also talk about the importance of lifestyle. And in talking about drinking alcohol, that's one of those things that people hate to hear. But even regardless of whether or not hormone therapy comes on board at this time, lifestyle really makes a huge difference, especially at this stage. Yeah. And so what were you finding when you were doing the research for this book as far as lifestyle and its importance?
Yeah, I think the big bird's eye view is that all these lifestyle habits we hear about a million times where we kind of roll our eyes and we're like, yeah, I know I need to eat well and get my protein and fiber and get it plenty of sleep. Like they really do move the needle. It's why we hear them a million times. And so what I tried to do in this book is explain why, so that when you understand the mechanism behind it, I think you're more likely to say, oh, okay, I'm going to prioritize that in my life. But yeah, and they really do work. I have changed the way I exercise after this reporting. We're all talking in the zeitgeist now about the importance of lifting weights in midlife, especially for women. And that's more of a priority now for me. I used to be sweating it out on the elliptical machine, watching all the men go into the weights room. And now I'm heading to the weight room first after my warm up.
Yeah, I agree. And I think the idea of over cardio, like doing too much with the cardio and running your lunch off or whatever, that also needs to change. That's not a good way to head into our midlife.
Totally. And I think those of us in midlife right now, we're subject to diet culture and a lot of the just negative downstream effects of watching our moms often yo-yo diet and jump on the latest trend, and they still exist, right? It's still hard to escape that we should be smaller. But I think there's a lot to learn from younger women now. I'm really inspired by the younger generation where they're just not buying into that garbage. They're really embracing who they are. And I think the more we can try to do that, especially in midlife, as our bodies change, as our health changes, the better off we'll be.
Yeah. When I talk with women about what kind of nutrition plan they would like to work on, they're like, oh, well, I did count points and that worked for me once. And I did keto for a while and that worked. And I want them to take a step back and say, well, if it really worked, why are we coming back to decide what we're going to do now? Like if it was something that worked, it would be sustainable. It would be something that you've stuck with. So really looking at those lifestyle habits as sustainable, life-changing patterns is so important. And I think that it's really good to have that as a section in this book.
Yeah. And it's also like when it comes to being sustainable as well, it's very personalized, right? And I think what happens oftentimes, we see these trends and we're like, I have to follow this to a T, when really that might not be the best for you. Those overarching lifestyle habits, yeah, they typically work for all of us, but it points to really being able to find clinicians in your life who you can gut check these things with and say, hey, like I'm eating this much protein and maybe there's an issue where it's jamming up your digestion, right? And you really need to rely on that team to help you make shared decisions, really is the goal.
Yeah. And when we're talking about all the different diet plans you could go into and things you could tweak or change that you've seen online and social media, all the clickbait that you see out there. There's so much health information. And I feel like it's almost like we're sucking it in like it's a fire hydrant and we can't discern. So there's a lot of it that's contradictory. Like you'll scroll through social media and you'll have somebody telling you wear a weighted vest when you go walk. And then you'll have somebody else telling you weighted vests are not as good for you as you think. So what kind of framework do you personally use to evaluate whether a claim about women's health is credible? And what can women take from that for their own peace of mind?
Yeah, what I want every woman to know is that she can be a health journalist in her own life, like me. The skills I use as a journalist are ones that everybody can learn, right? And it really is taking a look at the issue and then saying, okay, how am I going to research this in a way that helps me get to evidence-based information? And then what the consensus is. So what I would recommend doing and what I do myself is you open up a new tab on your computer and you open up multiple tabs actually, and you do something called lateral reading, which is you Google the information. So let's say it's weighted vests and women and are they beneficial? Literally just put in that. You want to try to make the question not very biased. You don't want it to be like, why weighted vests are great for your health? Because you'll find the answer to that question if that's what you're searching for. So try to be as unbiased as possible and then see what results come up in your search results and try to home in on the sources that are universities or big medical institutions like the Cleveland Clinic or the Mayo Clinic, or doctors, medical doctors or other experts in the health field who you can trust. I would say steer clear of people selling weighted vests for the answer. It's these common sense. We have common sense that we can apply to this, but I do think because we're in this chaos of misinformation and information overload these days, it is incumbent upon us to do a little more research. It takes a little bit of time, but you'll be way better off at the end and feeling more confident with your decision. I think if you put the a little bit of work in to figure out what the answer feels like for you.
Yeah. And I have found that the people that I trust the most are those that they've said something and then maybe the research changes and they're like, I thought this, but now that we have this information, this is how I feel. Like owning that and not sticking to their guns. I feel like that's somebody that's really trustworthy.
I 100% agree with you because the truth is that science changes, right? Like there might be research that looks really compelling showing one outcome and then more years of research on that same topic shows a different outcome and then the consensus changes. And so that's another reason to look at the medical consensus as well, rather than the outliers saying, this is a miracle. That's another big red flag too. If someone's promoting something as like the panacea to all your problems or like the miracle one thing you have to do and it's the only thing you have to do for better health, it's like red flag goes up.
Yeah. And also I've found a lot of the influencers that they've had an experience with something and it worked for them. And that's wonderful. But they don't have the background or the knowledge to understand that it may not work for everybody. It might just work for them. And there's also a lot of things to take into consideration when choosing what to do with your health. So while I love that they're bringing to light these topics of conversations, sometimes I have concern about what they're selling and putting out there to people.
Absolutely. And the fact that they're not saying, look, this is an N of one study, which are great, but that means they're the only study subject and they're studying themselves. And if they're an influencer, not a healthcare practitioner with a ton of schooling, maybe they don't have all the background information they need. And so again, just look at it, take it all with a grain of salt, right? Like look at the information, get curious about it, but don't take it as information that's worth its weight in gold, shall we say.
Yeah, absolutely. Are you ready to finally get personalized support for your midlife health without committing to a long program? With my new one-on-one coaching model, you'll start with a single 50-minute deep dive session where we review your full health history, lifestyle, and current concerns. Together, we'll create a plan designed specifically around your hormones, stress, sleep, and nutrition, one that's actually realistic for your life. From there, you can book follow-up sessions whenever you need them to stay on track, get accountability, overcome obstacles, or simply have someone cheering you on along the way. There's no pressure, no long-term contract, and no need to repeat the initial consult. Once you've completed that first session, you're my client for life, and we'll keep in touch in between your sessions. This flexible approach is built for real midlife women who want to experience guidance, science-based strategies, and compassionate support that evolves with them. If you're ready to take the first step, visit womenmasteringmidlife.com to book your free 15-minute discovery call. Let's talk about your goals and map out your next steps toward feeling vibrant, confident, and in control of your health again. I want to talk a little bit about the way that you've laid out the book, because I really do appreciate that this is a lifespan book, not necessarily a crisis manual for one particular part of life. Can you kind of talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So we, for years, I think our mothers, and certainly I have a copy of Our Bodies Ourselves, which is this amazing feminist manual on how to take care of our health. And it's still on my bookshelf. It's an incredible book. And really, that book covers what we now refer to as bikini medicine. Mm-hmm. It's our breast health, our gynecologic health, our sexual health. These are all really important aspects of health. But when Maria Shriver asked me to write this book, she commissioned me to write this book for her imprint. And she said, I want you to cover more. We know more now about women's brains, our hearts, our immune system, the various other aspects of our health. And so I was very intentional in laying out this book. I wanted to start it with a section on anatomy, because those of us who don't go to school to become healthcare practitioners, we basically get health class in 6th or 7th grade, and that leaves a lot to be desired for most of us. And
yes.
So oftentimes we just don't even really have a lay of the land of our own bodies. And so it starts with a section on a chapter on anatomy, moves into a lot of the female type bikini medicine chapters, gynecologic health, sexual health. And then I move into the specialty where I'm interviewed leading experts in each of their fields about the female heart and brain. And even there's a chapter on pain, because the way women experience pain is often different than men. And then in the end, it's really those lifestyles. The third section of the book is really sleep, nutrition, exercise, mental health. Yeah, just some of these sort of broader how to really feel like you're taking the reins of your health and making changes. So it really does span the life of a woman. I had a friend who said this should be a coffee table book, because it's sort of one of those books where you can tuck into and out of. It's fairly thick. It's 700 pages. So it's not going to be a book that you cozy up in your favorite reading chair with a cup of tea necessarily. But the beauty of keeping it out too, my friend said, was that men can pick it up. Don't we want our husbands and our sons and our dads and our guy friends to be able to support us as we go through things in life? And so, yeah, that was the intention behind the book.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned men, because I've also noticed that we're blaming everything on menopause and perimenopause as well. Like all of the mood swings, or we're having difficulties in our marriage, it's menopause. And so I'm kind of tired of that, right?
Yes. Oh my gosh, I can so relate to that, right? And it's like, it's become almost a joke because we're talking about it so much. It's just like, oh, it's menopause, or like, oh, I'm feeling a little ragey, it must be perimenopause. And it's like, well, wait a second, like, are we brushing it off too willy-nilly, right?
Yeah. I got in a conversation about this with somebody because they sent me the article about the Meno divorce. And I was like, okay, there's some validity to hormonal shifts and changes. But we need to also talk about the decades of relationship issues that we've had, that the women have placated, ignored, pushed down, whatever. And now we're like, wait, I'm coming into my own at this point, and this is my stopping point. I'm frustrated. And so I think while I love the talk about menopause, I also feel like we're kind of blaming menopause for everything.
I am so with you. And also I worry, I don't know about you, but I worry about the fact that we might be scaring a younger generation away from this transition, or just, I mean, it's not like we can scare them away from it. They're going to go through it, right? Mm-hmm. Like all women lucky enough to hit mid-age and work their way through this major hormonal transition. But man, there are some major upsides, like beyond just the obvious not bleeding anymore, not having to worry about birth control. These are life-changing things for the better. Mm-hmm. But also, I feel like I'm coming into my own in a new way. And yeah, I'm riding those emotional highs and lows. Like I can tell my perimenopausal hormones are really doing that big up and down dance. But there's this power that comes through it as well, where I feel more in tune with myself and my body than I had ever in the past. And there's gifts in that. There's a section in my book about the upsides of menopause. And I think you're absolutely right. It is so important that we talk about those as well, so that, gosh, I have a good friend who's 40. And I think anytime she's hanging around, like I'm 46, about to turn 47. And anytime she's around my age group, she's a little like eyes wide open, like, oh God, is this what I'm in for? And I feel like now I'm trying to be like, but there's good stuff as well, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I've been in this space about 5 years. And I remember in the beginning, just this feeling of irrelevance. Like you fade into the background when you get into the stage. You're no longer able to reproduce. So no one's paying attention to you. They're dismissing you. But now I recognize we have the wisdom of experience. We have all of these opportunities because our reproductive years are behind us. We can focus more on our creativity or what else we can bring to the world aside from raising children. And it really is a beautiful transition. And I think it's really important that women dig into that too.
I am so with you. I interviewed Dr. Heather Bartos, who had this great analogy. She's like, perimenopause is kind of this whitewater rapids ride. Like there's some fun, but man, it can also be a little terrifying, right? And you're going up and down, right? But at the end of a whitewater rapids trip, you land in this placid lake where things are great and you're just chilling and you just like went through that exhilarating ride and then you're basking in the delight of it. And I feel like we have to remember that, right? We have to remember that, yeah, sure, there might be some bumps and some rapids, so to speak, but then you get to the end of it and it's like, oh, cool. Like this is the new me and I'm here for her,
Yeah. It's so important that you added that to the book. I love that we're not just talking about hot flashes and night sweats, and we're not just talking about bikini medicine. You're digging into brain health and heart health. And the brain in particular, I feel like is kind of a neglected organ a little bit. Did you find that when you were writing this book?
Yeah, it's such an important organ, right? And like we don't think about our brains. It's funny because our brains are thinking all day. I think that's the thing about a lot of these specialties. We don't really think about our brains until something feels off, right? Maybe we're dealing with a little brain fog or something worse. Our bones, right? When's the last time you thought about your skeleton? Like we just don't, we move through the world without thinking about these things, even our hearts. And so, yeah, when it comes to brain health, I think one of the biggest things is for women in particular to know is that we deal with Alzheimer's. We disproportionately suffer from Alzheimer's to the tune of 2/3 of the cases of Alzheimer's disease are women. I think not enough women still really fully understand that. And when we do, it's not to scare us. It's not to say, oh, we're doomed to cognitive decline, but rather to say, okay, if I know, and the midlife transition, menopause is linked to those disproportionate diagnoses with estrogen going down, having big impacts in the brain. And so if we know this, we can say, okay, what can I do now to tee myself up for the best possible shot at healthy brain aging?
Yeah. In the research that you've done around brain health, I want to ask your opinion because hormone therapy is not indicated for brain health. Do you feel that that's a disservice to women and that might shift at some point?
Yeah, I think it could shift at some point. I'm big into let's look at the evidence. And then when you have the evidence, you can then talk to your practitioner to make a decision for you. And so, yeah, I have also seen that it's not a green light indication, right? And there's plenty of women who say, oh my gosh, the minute I started hormone therapy, I didn't have brain fog anymore. And so it makes you wonder, is there, with all the estrogen receptors in the brain, how could it not be helping? But I look at what the available research is, and then I think, again, it points to if brain fog is a symptom that you're really dealing with in perimenopause, and menopause, go to your doctor, bring it up, have a conversation about whether or not hormone therapy is right for you so you can make that decision more personalized.
Yeah, I remember personally saying to my husband, I think I need to be checked for early onset dementia because I was the person who I held all the birthdays in my brain and all the anniversaries. And so I was responsible for all that. And I was walking into rooms forgetting what I was there for. I was leaving burners on the stove. I mean, just crazy things that were completely out of the norm for me. And I started hormone therapy and I felt like that fog kind of cleared a little bit. Obviously, when I'm overstressed, overworked, spread thin, it's still an issue. So it's not a fix for everything. But I do definitely feel like there were times when I thought I was losing my mind.
Yeah, and I think a lot of women can relate to that. And then they do exactly what you do, which is go to the worst possible scenario of oh my gosh, I have early onset Alzheimer's disease. And it's understandable. And it's a signal, in my view, to just say, okay, let me take a deep breath. Let me keep track of my symptoms. That's another really big takeaway for me is the importance of us really keeping notes on what we're dealing with. As women, we often just power through. And we might have that fear in the back of our mind, but then we're just like, I got so much to do. And it goes off the radar. And it's time to change that. Even if you just grab a notebook or take out your phone and open the notes app on your phone and just jot it down. So this way, when your appointment with your doctor does come up, you can just say, you know what, I've taken some notes about what I'm dealing with. Can we have a discussion about this? Can you give me your assessment of what I'm dealing with? We're worth that, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I went to the Menopause Society conference this last year, and I did notice in the gallery there's a lot of technology apps coming out for women in this stage to track symptoms and cycles and all the things. And I hope that becomes more common for doctors to give their patients for the in-between visits, you have a record of everything.
I'm so with you. And thankfully, as more of us women as we talk about menopause more and as we're in roles in our work of places where we can make decisions, we're seeing so much more femtech, as it's called, come available. And it's so fantastic, right? It's thank goodness. Thank goodness we are now able to have apps that make it easier to do things like track symptoms. That's fantastic.
Yeah. So you came at this book with a journalist's eye, and you've done a lot of research, but you also included your own personal story. And why did you find that to be so important when writing this?
Yeah, I mean, so as a health journalist, I'm steeped in these topics, right? I am assigned an article and then I get to do a bunch of research and call the world's leading experts. And so I have this kind of baseline knowledge about a lot of topics. And still, as I was reporting this book, I could not believe how much I just didn't know. We go through life in these amazing bodies, and oftentimes we're just so like clueless to it. And so that's what happened to me. For years, I dealt with really debilitatingly heavy menstrual cycles. And I just chalked it up to like, this is my body. I hemorrhage, as I would joke, for a few days every month, and I'll deal with it. I'm tough. I can do hard things. I just had that mindset. And then, to be honest, I think as I approached 40 and we started collectively talking about menopause, I just assumed it's probably perimenopause. And I didn't ever bring it up in any, and I go to annual gynecology visits and I never brought it up. And finally, I started working on this book and was like, I think I have to bring this up. Like, I think I was always borderline anemic, low iron, and then iron supplements were really hard for me to tolerate. And sure enough, I had a uterus full of fibroids. That it wasn't until actually just being more specific with my symptoms with a healthcare nurse practitioner who said, you know what, I think we're going to do a vaginal ultrasound. And sure enough, a uterus full of fibroids that explained my crime scene periods. And yeah, I ended up at the very end, I turned in the manuscript for this book, and then I had a hysterectomy, which turned out to be the only way to treat my case of fibroids. It was the best decision I made for myself. And I felt like it was really important to talk about, right? Because just to normalize, like, if you feel like you have missed some things, if you have questions, and I think a lot of times we feel like we should know more, and there's a little bit of shame in the mix. And we feel like, oh, that's a dumb question, I shouldn't bring it up. Or I'm a little embarrassed to talk about that, I shouldn't bring it up. And I just want every woman to know, bring it up. The people taking care of you have heard and seen everything. You're not going to say anything that could shock them. And if you bring up what you're feeling, the symptoms you're going through, there is such a better chance that you're going to get help for those symptoms, right?
Yeah, I think, I don't know if it's a generational thing. I'm hoping that women are more inclined to speak up as generations grow up and get into this whole thing. But there's just this feeling of doctors are the authority figure and doctors know best. And when you hear it's just a part of getting older and you take that as an answer, those are all the things that I'm hearing from women when I talk to them. It's also, they don't want to bring it up. Like you said, they're either embarrassed, they don't know how to bring it up, they feel rushed, or they go into an appointment ready to say something and then they get all jumbled up, or the doctor starts their path and they don't know where to fit their words in. So I think having this book and knowing how to advocate for yourself and what to look for, how to ask the questions, I think is going to really help a lot of women.
Yeah, because knowledge gives us power and a sense of empowerment, right? It's like, I think you're totally right. Like, that was the goal, which is that when we have the information we need and the language we need to talk about what we're going through, we just feel more confident when we're in that situation. And there's a power differential there. We've got the doctor in the scrubs or the white coat, and we're in the flimsy gown and sitting on a table. And it's already baseline can be a really nerve-wracking experience, even for the most confident among us. And I think when we feel confident talking about these things because we have a baseline knowledge, it's just so much harder to feel dismissed. And if we do feel dismissed, it's so much clearer that, like, it's time for a new doctor. And I think, so I mentioned earlier, I had a breast MRI for the first time, and it was because I had a proactive conversation with my gynecologist at an appointment. I said, I took the Tyrer-Cuzick risk assessment test at home. No doctor had ever done it with me, which is it's just a shame and another conversation and a big takeaway from my book. But I did it myself, and I brought it to him. And I said, these are the results. I'd like to have a conversation with you about breast cancer screening for myself and whether or not I'm on the right path. And he looked at the results. He looked at my last memo, and he was like, I think let's do a breast MRI. And so walking away from that appointment, I just felt so proud of myself to be like, look, I knew enough to take this risk assessment, to bring him the results, to have a conversation. And to be honest, I think he really appreciated it as well. Our healthcare providers, who are really amazing, they want patients like that who come proactively saying, here's what I want to talk about. Here's the research I've done. What do you think?
Yeah. I think for me, one of the hardest things that I have found is I'm afraid it's going to be normal. Like I push for something and I want to advocate for something, but I'm afraid it's going to cost money, time, the doctor's patience, whatever, and it's going to come back normal and I'm going to feel silly. But we need to stop worrying about a normal result. We should be happy about a normal result, but we should stop worrying about advocating for something that then comes back fine.
Absolutely. I think that's a really good point because it's like, yeah, you're still worth the screening, right? Because what if it wasn't normal? Like, oh, great. Like it's normal. You know what my mom does, which I love, is like every time she finds out she doesn't have cancer after a screening, she goes on a little shopping spree. She buys herself a new candle or a sweater or something like that. And I'm just like, wow, cool. Like the next time you're worried about something coming back normal and it does, like celebrate, right?
Yeah, or treat it as a baseline. At least I know now at this age, this came back normal so that when we do this again, we have a baseline.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. So when a woman finishes the new rules of women's health, what do you hope changes in how she approaches menopause, advocates for herself, and participates in the decisions about her care?
Yeah, my biggest goal is for women to feel confident, for us to feel like, okay, I have the information I need to be able to show up to my appointments and really get good care, to feel confident, to walk away from those appointments feeling like I felt heard, I felt understood, and if I didn't, I know exactly what I need to do, which is to talk to my bestie and find out who she sees and likes and get a new doctor or practitioner. I think my ultimate goal when that happens, you feel enlivened leaving your doctor's visits and you feel more excited to make changes in your life that are going to help your health. I had a visit with a new primary care physician at a certain point in the book, and I'm telling you, her eyes like lit up when we were talking. And it was this really cool experience because I was like, gosh, like I was steeped in the reporting of this book. And so I was talking to her in very specific terms, but also in a way that felt really proactive. Like, look, here's what I know. Here's what I'm thinking are big topics for me in midlife. What do you think? And she just was excited. And I think that's my biggest hope, that women walk away after reading my book feeling like, oh, I'm going to have that appointment where the doctor's eyes start sparkling a little bit because I came with a plan and walked away with an even better plan.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I would be interested to know how many healthcare providers get excited when they feel like their patients have an investment in their own health versus just showing up not feeling well or checking the boxes.
I think it's a good gauge. I mean, I'd say every single physician and clinician I interviewed for my book wants their patients to show up really engaged and proactive. They're amazing clinicians. And I think that's another good benchmark for you. Like if you feel engaged and excited to be at a doctor's visit to talk about your health and you walk away feeling worse and like your doctor was like bummed out that you came with a bunch of like things you wanted to talk about, like I know it's hard to get a new doctor and it's not always possible for everybody, but man, if at all possible, like you want to try to look for someone else who you feel like you want to and can make shared decisions with. Because that's the thing, like we cannot outsource our care. We have to be active participants in it. I think our generation is finally really stepping into that. I think younger generations are way better than us, which I am here for it. Like I can't wait to watch my nieces roll through the world in such a different way than I did. We're doing better. There's hope.
Oh yeah. My 14 and 16-year-old, I'm like, wow, it's going to be so much better for you. And you can thank me later that we paved the way for this.
Yeah, totally. And you learn from our mistakes, right?
Exactly. Well, Thank you so much for coming on and talking about the book. And this research was needed and necessary. I'm excited to be able to have this to share as a reference for my clients and for women that I know. I'll make sure to list in the show notes below all of your information, where they can find you, where they can get the book. And again, thank you so much for writing it and doing the work that we all need to better understand our health.
Thank you so much. I so appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Women Mastering Midlife. If something you heard today resonated, I'd be so grateful if you'd share it with a friend who might need a little extra support on her midlife journey. Remember, small changes can make a big difference, and you don't have to navigate this transition alone. We will be back next week with more expert guidance and compassionate conversations to help empower you to master midlife on your terms. Until then, you can find us on Instagram at Women Mastering Midlife, or come connect with me directly at Miss Victoria Bird. And you're looking for deeper connection and support, be sure to join us in the Women Mastering Midlife community. We'd love to continue the conversation with you there. If you've enjoyed this episode, please rate and review this podcast. It helps us reach more amazing women mastering midlife just like you. You'll find all the links from today's episode and ways to connect in the show notes below. See you next time.